It really is about how deeply do I respect my body and my life. I mean, that at the core, that's the journey that we're on. And that's why we're doing what we're doing. It's out of respect for this life that we have and wanting to be able to live it as fully as possible, to be as expressed and joyful and sad and energetic and all the things as we possibly can, rather than living through this haze and this fog. And so then coming into this, where I'm like, whoo, I have a real reason for my wellness and for like my family and all these things to be doing this. And I still felt like shy to tell people, partially because I'll start something and I won't always complete it. And what's the problem with that anyway? Like, what is the problem with having cycles and evolution?
Can we just like full stop there?
Yes.
What the hell? It's such a stereotype, and it's like, oh, what's the thing now? And it's like, I'm sorry.
Yes.
So what, should I just like my whole life just always be the same and like commit to not changing so that there's no variable that's changing on you at anytime we encounter each other?
Right. I know. And I feel like I've even been like shame-splaining myself through this as though it's like a problem. And it's really not. It's like, this is how we grow. This is how we expand. This is how we become exciting people that know we know a lot of different things, right? Through trying it on.
Help Me See is a podcast dedicated to the art of seeing. It's a space for the restless visionary with an insatiable desire to create the life and work you're meant for. My name is Bianca Leah Mora, and I'm a photographic artist, a mother, and a coach who's transformed my fear of loss into power, art, and philosophy. One of the scariest quotes I never want to say is, "I wish I knew at the time." But I truly believe that we have the innate ability to bring our wise 2020 hindsight to our now. You can deeply experience your nostalgia now while it's actually happening with no regrets. All you have to do is see. In this show, we laugh, we cry, we get inspired, we overshare. We have life-changing conversations around making meaning, self-discovery, and shedding all of the BS layers in order to reconnect to our own sacred vision. Seeing yourself is an essential key to living powerfully. You are the vessel, the lens that filters absolutely everything in your life. What are you filtering for? Whether it be conversations with fellow artists and visionaries or my solo audio journal style introspective ramblings, each episode is meant to feel like an exhale, an unraveling of truth, a moment for you to be able to put your finger on something that you haven't been able to for far too long. Come exactly as you are. It's perfect. Honor your instincts. Let's uncover some of the most important things in our lives, which all too often can slip out from our view. Let's commit to seeing and consciously creating what only you can in your one and only life. Let's dive in. Hello, and welcome to another episode of Help Me See. I'm dropping a quick intro in here because today's episode is with my dear friend, Steph Trzaska. And we chat about many things. A lot of the conversation circles around our joint venture into eating in a thyroid-friendly way. Steph and I both have autoimmune diseases with our thyroid, and she came across this book and basically was like, hey, I'm going to try to eat like this to try to support my thyroid and see if I feel any different. I'm like, sure, I'll give it a go. Want to feel less shitty. So when we reference our new style of eating, that's what we're talking about. I'm coming to you sitting on a bare mattress. My son had an accident in our bed, and all day we've been hitting it with different types of cleaning to try to make it not smell like urine. I really feel compelled to share with you here that I have just not been feeling great. And I say that not as a cry for help, not as a, although what's wrong with that, right? Like if I was looking for help, no, not as a cry for help, but just as a honest, like level setting here, because I was finishing listening to the sound or whatever from the last episode. And I was like, wow, that was just a few days ago when I had such a different level of energy. And today I've just been on the brink of tears all day. I'm just so overwhelmed. I'm so worried about everything. And if that's you right now, I just want to give space for that. You know, it's so easy when we're feeling like enthusiastic and inspired and with a close friend to just be like, yeah, like, fuck it. Yeah, we're doing the most we can. And feel really supported and energized in that space. But then there's the realness of feeling so alone and like you're carrying the weight of the world on your shoulders. And I'm worried about everything, the pain in my hip, and what is it? And why am I so tired? Is it normal tired? Or is there something wrong with me? And oh my goodness, like, how am I going to squeeze in like my work with some educational fun and quality time with the kids during summer when I'm home? And then, oh my goodness, I leave and travel for work in a couple weeks and I feel guilty about that. Blah, blah, blah. Ugh. You know, to the point where sometimes the venting is just too draining. It's like, you know, it would be helpful to get it off your chest, but you don't even have the energy to do that. You go to open your mouth to start sharing it with like one of your closest friends, and like all the energy leaves your body and you're like, never mind, I just don't even want to do that right now. So if that is you, I am holding space for that. And, you know, I do find that podcasts are really helpful in that way because it provides this really unique experience to where it feels so intimate because you're listening to someone like in your headphones or in your car or in the intimate places and spaces of your life while you're doing the dishes or while you're running errands, driving around, whatever. And you're listening to this conversation that feels private and very specific, but you don't actually have to expel the energy to participate. You don't actually have to partake and just involve yourself in that way. And I think that sometimes that's really helpful. And one last thing before I go, I always say this will be like a 1-minute intro, and then I always babble my face off. But I was in this container once, and oh my goodness, I wish I could remember her name. I'll add it to the show notes if I do. But I went to this online workshop of sorts, and the facilitator had us go into Zoom groups, you know, when you can like one-on-one put yourself and someone else in there and then go back to the main group later. And the thing was, we had to, for 5 minutes each, talk, and the other person was on mute and start talking about something, anything. And once your time was up, you couldn't respond. Like, you weren't responding to what was said. You were just sharing exactly like what's on your heart or whatever the prompt was or whatever. And it was actually so much harder to be the one on mute, to just listen and to not, you know, come to the rescue of someone, not in a condescending way, but in a like, oh, supportive way, or like you want to be like actively engaged and like show you're listening or you know, whatever. It was just so astounding to me how many times like I went to respond and I'm like, oh my God, just shut the fuck up. Like, just like listen, you know? And it was a really, really powerful experience that I will not forget. And also on the flip side, when you're the one that's talking and knowing the other person cannot speak, cannot say something, you always find your way back to yourself. It's like you start talking in these like circles of, it's like journaling, but out loud, like free writing or morning pages or whatever. But when you're talking with someone and you know that they cannot respond, you just kind of fill in the blanks and you kind of astound yourself with how much wisdom you have about the situation you're talking about. So, maybe that should be the new format of my of a sacred seeing. We'll add a new call that's basically everyone taking turns just talking while everyone else is on mute. Anyway. Okay. That is what I have for you today. My friend Steph, she leads women's circles here at local Cleveland area. She hosts retreats. She does coaching containers. She's just a delightfully real, gorgeous person. And any information that you want to check out about her will be in the show notes. I believe at the time I drop this episode, there'll be a couple days left if you wanted to sign up for her container, if you're local to Cleveland, that she hosts an intimate group of women for, I think it's 6 months. And that's called The Village. If you're interested, more information will be in the show notes there. And if you're just feeling compelled to be more vocal in these conversations instead of just listening to me ramble on the podcast, then I invite you to check out Sacred Seeing, my weekly membership. I call it monthly because it's a monthly thing, but the meetings are actually every week. A weekly membership for creatives and artists to come together and do the work that is so important to their souls and to talk about it and connect and not feel so gosh darn alone in the pursuit of your passions. So that is what I have for you today. I hope you enjoy my conversation with Steph, and I will catch you next time.
What I was thinking about yesterday? I was thinking about how I was so tired, like unbearably tired, driving Cash to school. And I knew it was like, I'm getting my period. I had the cramps. It was like, it's coming. And then I was like, okay, I have to go to Starbucks and get like a large cold brew right after this, like just to be able to keep my eyes open. And after I got the coffee and I was like on my way home, I'm like, isn't it funny how I didn't even consider for a second that like I was just going to be really tired today, or maybe I'll just take a nap at all. I was like, oh my God, I must, like that's how deep this goes. So I don't know. I just think that more and more, I'm like encountering women that are actually treating like their cycle like differently than regular life.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm so grateful for hearing about that because it's given me even the chance to see an option, even if I'm not taking it, even if it's not my first, second, third, fourth, or fifth impulse. I am like, oh yeah, wait, it is an option to be like, oh, I'm bleeding heavily and I'm really tired. Perhaps I shall lay down.
Yeah, there's that mentality that you have, which I feel like I don't. So we can talk about the differences there. But where you're like, I'm tired, fuel to push through. Like, rather than honoring where my body is in this moment and feeling into that more deeply, I am just going to find this solution where I'm using quotes so that I can do what is expected of me or what I expect of myself today and like push on. Does that feel correct?
Oh, I mean, I have like I guess an emotional and physical intolerance to that. It's like, no, I want to do that. It's like I don't even want in those moments. Like there, of course, is nuance in different situations, but like in the moments where I just started my day and I like have stuff I really want to do or have to do, quote unquote, whatever. I'm just like, no, I don't want to slow down. I don't want to relax. And then I wonder how much of that is because I'm just not open to it. How much of that is just because I've historically never done that. really the only thing that I allow to like lay me up is when I get migraine. When I
Mm.
like succumb, I'm like, I can't, there is that no option.
Yeah. Yeah. I, on the other hand, am like, I'm real good at relaxing. I'm like real good at being like, I'm feeling resistance. Like yesterday, I was writing an email. I have not written to my email community for probably a month. I've become one of those people, like a monthly newsletter, maybe. Um,
Perhaps.
Yeah. And I mean, I don't think that's bad either necessarily, right? I mean, that's about cycles and rhythms too, because there are times when I'm like, I've got a lot to say and creativity is flowing. I might be emailing my community 2 to 3 times a week, and just chatting with them there. But right now, that's just not what's happening. So yesterday I was like, oh, it's been a month. I should write an email and plug in. Also, I find that I do some of my best writing when it feels performance like. So writing it into the actual flow desk rather than writing into a document, because even though no one's receiving it while I'm writing it into Flowdesk, I'm like, this is for people to consume. Like people are going to read this. And even if I would
Yeah.
write in a Google Doc, I'm like, I don't know, it's like a different energy. And then I let my ADD take over and I get distracted. And then I don't complete it, but I seem to
it feels
better.
like the scratch paper versus the nice like
Yeah.
doc.
Yeah. Yeah. So I was writing in the flow desk and I was like, I'm gonna finish this email. And then like the heaviest, drowsiest feeling, just like I mean, it was like a bubble, like a thick, heavy bubble that just, encased me. And I just couldn't write anymore. And I was like, no, but I really want to finish. I have plenty of time to finish this email. I have plenty of time before I'm meeting with my client. And then I was like, no, just close the computer. Like you'll finish it when you have energy and when you're inspired, And so I just closed it, even though I had time to get it done. And you have, just like I do, we both have very limited work time that is totally revolving around our children. And so we can feel that pressure, like, but I got to use like the 23 minutes that I have left or the 11 minutes that I have left to complete, to go. So I do have that voice. I do have that voice like that that you definitely have. I feel like I have really learned to just quiet it and like feel into my body more. I do stop. And I feel like this links up to something we were chatting about before we hit record of like, what do we want to talk about today? Like what feels relevant in our lives? What carries a message for anyone that's listening? And we both have Hashimoto's and hypothyroidism, and this has caused both of us to feel exhausted, like extreme fatigue, have this mysterious weight gain and total weight loss resistance, which again, like you just don't feel like yourself. You don't feel like you're in your body. You lose connection to your like playful, joyous energy and like your sensual self. And I don't remember if this is a symptom for you too, but for me, it's been this irritability and mood swings and like this weird kind of panicked rage that will come in that I didn't have before this diagnosis in the same way, and I had one child already. It was when my second one was born that my symptoms started 3 years ago. But it like, so this is like that situation too, where I've seen you and heard you talking about these symptoms that you've been living with and fighting through and just getting through your days, trying to be a creator and a mother and a partner and a daughter and all the other things. And the other day you came over to my house and we shared a moment where you were like, thank you for inviting me to, well, I guess we haven't gone into what this is, what I invited you to do, which was like basically overhaul our entire diets. And we can get into what, but like, someone fell into my lap, the medical medium, Anthony Jones, I think. I don't even know his name. I'm just like, okay, this is my Bible now. So this helps someone. And I read the book and like, what's this?
Sorry, wait. There was this thing where it was like an ADHD reel, and it was like, oh, new hobby. And it's like you research like for 17 hours, like the best equipment must have the best of the best, must know everything about the history of this. insane. Yeah, exactly. Kind of like that. So yes, we don't even know who the name of this thing is by, but we're doing it by George.
By George, by golly, we are doing it. And it requires, like, it's intense. It's intense. It's removing these top allergens: soy, corn, dairy, gluten, pork, canola oil, and something else that I'm forgetting.
Egg.
Citric acid, egg. Did I say that? I didn't say egg. Yeah, all of these things that are healthy foods, right? I mean, depending how you eat them, but apparently feed this virus, EBV, that is attacking our systems and creating inflammation. Like, we don't need to go into the science. Unless you're dealing with this yourself, you probably don't care at all. But this information came to me and I resonated with everything in the book. And it's everything different from what my endocrinologist has said. It's everything different from any doctor that I've talked to. It's like everything I read in this book about thyroid healing with a medical medium is different. And so I reached out to you and was like, I don't know if you want to do this, but like, I'm all in on this. Yep. My ADD, my hyper focus, like, I want results. Right? It's been 3
This
years.
speed train.
Yeah. And you were like, yeah, okay, like, I'll do it. Not really knowing, I think, right, what you were getting into. And
Really. Yeah.
we can talk about those details. But that moment of like, like, you said to me, I wouldn't have done this or tried to make this change until
Yeah.
I was like lying in a gutter, like, until it was so bad that I couldn't do anything else.
Yeah.
where that's like, I'm so opposite of that, where I'm just like, I have to find a way, like this, I just, I mean, we both have the warrior spirit, in different ways, I think,
Yeah. That's so funny. It's true. It's like a big flex in different areas. I'm like, no, I'll suffer here. And you're like, I won't, I shan't, I can't.
Yeah.
And then in terms of like the creator stuff, I'm like, I'll work myself to the bone because I must get this out. And you're like, another time.
Yeah. I know. I'm just like eating bonbons with my feet up, like,
So actually you're not eating bonbons because that has a lot of gluten and soy.
I'm eating celery sticks and cucumbers and bunches of cilantro. I'm eating like a rabbit.
I will say that I do think too that I just never cared enough to stick with something that much. But I think that, well, definitely having someone like that that's in the same boat doing this with me is like so helpful. And also, like, never in my life, you trying to lose weight after kids, work it, whatever, high school, never in my life have I had like the to or willpower to like pass on ice cream or on this or that. And it's never been like this like huge issue in my life, but like it's also like I just know myself and I know how I'm like, yeah, okay, like I'm pretty lax about that kind of thing. And with these restrictions, I've never stuck to something so long, and I've also never done anything with so many restrictions. So interesting. And I think a lot of that too is that I think that in reading that book, and I haven't read the whole book. I think you read more than I have for sure. But to just like understand that it's not just about what ends up showing outside, like weight wise, or what's like blanket vague statement not good for you, but like how much I eat very healthy as well, so it's like whatever, a balance. But to understand cognitively that like putting this into my body is actively helping my body attack itself, it's different.
Yes.
Just hits different. So like even when I'm like with my family and they're eating ice cream, I notice internally there's this space that it's like there's no energy ping-ponging back and forth. And you're like, oh, I want to, but no, I can't. I won't. It's just very clear, like I'm just not having this. And like, of course, I'll be like, oh, it'd be so nice to have that right now. But like it's just not even on the table, And that's never been for me before.
Yeah, I feel like we all need a reason it comes down to what is your reason for making change in your life, for feeling better, for doing something differently. Like, what is the reason? And the reason has to be so strong, and you have to believe in it so much that that's what creates the lasting change. Or at least if it's not lasting, right? Like, we may both follow this new lifestyle change and this new way of eating for 6 months to a year and be like, oh, but I don't feel that different. And then it's like, okay, maybe, we stop doing it, and find another path or another way towards healing. Although I think we both have this knowing, and that's what it feels like for me. Like, I just have like a lot of trust that this is a key component. It might not be the only piece in my healing journey as far as Hashimoto's goes. But yeah, I feel like prior to feeling like you had a reason, like the foods that I'm eating, that I'm putting into my body, are actually creating war in my body. Like, prior to that understanding, what was your relationship like with fuel, like with food, things you're putting in your body? What was your relationship like with the ways that you were or you weren't taking care of yourself? Like, did you feel like I'm trying things, I'm putting things into place to support myself in these areas where I feel broken or where I feel burnt out or where I feel tapped out? Or was it something that you just accepted as, well, this is just the way that my life is now, and this is the way it goes? Like, before you had a reason, what did it feel like living your life feeling the way you did?
Well, I mean, it's interesting because before I had I think backing it up a little bit, I think it's odd. It can be odd for me to make a decision and a choice so quickly, because I can really be one of those people that, like we were talking about the other night, like read through every line on a sales page or like and decide something. But then there are definitely times where I don't need that deliberation time. Like when I decided to pull my oldest out of daycare for the summer, I just like had the idea and instantly I was like, I know I'm doing it, even though it has like huge ramifications, like in terms of many things. I was just like, oh yeah, like that. Of course, I didn't even think to do that, but now I'm doing that most certainly, and it happened like that. So for this, I think before I had a reason. I mean, I had the reason the whole time. Like I was just like, it's just been getting progressively worse. Like I just want to be able to focus. I just want to have like a more of a bandwidth for like my life, and the irritability and like that nervous system stuff and all of that. But I think that what's so interesting to me about, like, this is a microcosm for so much. You were talking about like the things that you put into your body are like war inside. But the problem is when you don't see it so evidently, when it's not like, when it's more insidious, right? So for me, it's not like anything I was eating was like, oh, and then I felt like shit after that. Or then, oh my gosh, my stomach hurt so bad. Nothing. It was not any of that.
Right.
But isn't that such a parallel to life in the broadest sense? It's like most things don't automatically make you, fall on your ass or whatever. It's just these tiny little things, like splinter, 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 splinter. And all of a sudden, one step, not looking up, and you will look up and then you're like, where the fuck am I? How did I get here? How is this my life? What am I doing? What? Like, so I don't know. I think it's interesting that I've always very much been a go with the flow person in most ways. I definitely have ways where I'm not. I don't think my partner would describe me as a go with the flow type of person, but in my perspective, I think I am in many ways. So when it came to like eating habits and stuff, I love healthy food, but then I also really love sweets and stuff. So I just kind of accepted like the yin and the yang and whatever. And a lot of what I would choose to do or not do was circumstantial to, where we were, like who I was with, blah, blah, blah. So it is very interesting to, as this being the the conversation point right now, eating. And this, I feel like, goes for everything in life. But with the eating, I think it's interesting to hold yourself as that steady, like, I will make everything work around this instead of you working around whatever situation you're in. Like we were talking about family gatherings. And of course you want to eat like the traditional, like old family stuff. And of course, and then there's like the awkward conversation of like, it's fine if we don't eat that and blah, blah, blah. But to respect yourself to that degree to where you're like, this is in the highest good long term for me, for my family, for my relationships, so I'm going to do this, even though it sucks. Yeah, it's just really interesting. What have you found with that? Because I think I really prided myself on, I unconsciously prided myself on being easy going. That's fine. You want to eat that? I hate a lot of things, so whatever. I'm fine. But now, like, no, I'm sticking to this. It's a very different feeling.
Yeah. I love how you put that. I already forget. Thank gosh it's recorded because I'm like, how did you say it? Like working your life and the people and like events around you rather than you working around all of it. And the level of respect. I mean, that's such a good point that it really is about how deeply do I respect my body and my life. I mean, that at the core, that's the journey that we're on. And that's why we're doing what we're doing. It's out of respect for this life that we have and wanting to be able to live it as fully as possible, to be as expressed and joyful and sad and energetic and all the things as we possibly can, rather than living through this haze and this fog and looking like people that we don't feel like are reflective, right, of our values and the ways that we might take care of ourselves. So I really love that component of respect. And it's true. And I wonder if that's why, like, I don't know if you felt this way too, but like I felt very shy to kind of tell people of the changes I'm making. Number one, because like I am ADD, so I do hyper focus and come up with like, this is the thing that I'm doing now, and this is what I believe, and then I go all in, and then it's like, oh no, I'm not doing that anymore. Years ago, probably 10 or 11 years ago, I was doing plant-based eating, like vegan, but really as minimally processed as possible. And I was doing it for the animals and for the environmental impact and all of that. And I did it for a couple years, and that was like easier in some ways because you could still like corn and I don't know, but anyway, it really didn't agree with my body at all. Like I put on weight and I was more tired, and I was probably eating things like soy and corn and, like that now we can't eat, that might have been making me feel worse at the time and I didn't know it. But like I'd gone all in on that lifestyle, and like, my family and my friends knew about it. And then I just stopped doing it. I eventually was like, oh, I'm going to incorporate dairy and meat again. And oh, I actually feel so much better. Okay. And until I got to a place where I was eating processed foods all the time again, like drive through, no problem. And like you, like had total pride in how flexible of an eater I could be. Like, oh no special accommodations for me. I'll eat anything. Like totally just felt like, yep, like whatever the crowd is doing, like I'm great. You don't need to do anything special for me. And so then coming into this, where I'm like, whoo, I have a real reason for my wellness and for like my family and all these things to be doing this. And I still felt like shy to tell people, partially because I'll start something and I won't always complete it. And what's the problem with that anyway? Like, what is the problem with having cycles and evolution?
Can we just like full stop there? Like, I feel
Yeah.
like being judged for like, oh, what's she doing this time? It's like, I'm sorry. And instead of just like my whole life is same. It's like I read something and it's actually not flaky to be like, oh, I'm really wanting to commit to this and see what this experience is like and actually do it.
Yes.
What the fuck? It's such a stereotype, and it's like, oh, what's the thing now? And it's like, I'm sorry.
Yes.
But what should I just like my whole life just always be the same and like commit to not changing so that there's no variable that's changing on you at anytime we encounter each other?
Right. I know. And I feel like I've even been like shame-splaining myself through this, being like, oh, it's my ADD, like dropping it in throughout our
Oh,
conversation already. I've done it like as though
I
it's
did
like
this.
a problem. And it's really not. It's like, this is how we grow. This is how we expand. This is how we become exciting people that know we know a lot of different things, right? Through trying it on.
I grossed myself out so bad the other day. I cringed at myself like afterwards. I was like, ew. You ever do that where and you're like, ew.
Oh, yeah.
It was the first time, I think I might have told you, I don't remember. It was the first time I went to a restaurant on this. And the guy was like taking my order and I had to ask like awkward questions or whatever. And I said, basically, like I was making a joke out of it. And I was like, oh, basically just no fun. Anything that's fun, like take it out of what I'm eating. I was like, I just started this. Like, and I'm like, why am I explaining that? Why am I saying like, oh no, I usually like don't care like what you put in my food, but like now I have to be careful. And I'm like, it's so not fun. I know. Oh, I suck. It's like, what am I saying right now? It's so terrible.
Yeah. Oh, totally. Totally. I know. And I've been like going when I go to family functions, like bringing my own food. And then when they have something that they actually did make for me, that they're like, oh, we want to have something you can eat. I'm like, oh, I would not expect you to go out of your way and do that. Like, you don't know how long I'm going to be doing this. It's like probably hard for you to think about having to adjust what you're making to accommodate me. And I got all nervous too. Like, this was with my in-laws, and they're like, because they were like, oh, well, what can you eat? And I'm like, actually, a lot. Like, and they said it in like a kind, curious way of like, well, what can you eat? Because we eat over there, usually like once a week. And there is plenty that we can eat in this new way. But I also was like, but don't worry about it. Like, I can eat, just cook things in olive oil and not butter or canola oil, and just have dairy on the side. But you don't need to do that for me. Like, I'll just bring my own food and it'll be fine. Right. So I feel like this whole theme of respect, too, that we were talking about before is like it's like layers. It's like this is not just a journey in healing ourselves physically, but it's a journey in creating and establishing deeper respect for self and boundaries and expectations that you may have for others and how they might care for you. Because like bottom line, the people that love us do want to take care of us. Like it might be a little bit of a hassle at the beginning to learn a new way to do something, but it's also like if we respect our lives to have ease and flow in them, like, yeah, those in your close-knit community, they can know what adjustments they need to make, right? Or that they can make if they're there to support you. So it's like first that decision of respect of I'm not going to put certain things in my body because it's actually creating all of this dissonance and imbalance and inflammation and et cetera. But then there's this next level of respect of, okay, and now how do I communicate to the outside world the way that I need to nourish myself without shame-splaining it, without being like, oh, yeah, it's no fun. Oh, don't worry, and how many other ways do we do this in our life? Like our topic here, or the way we started it at least, has been with this diet and lifestyle change for autoimmune disease. But like, what other areas are we abandoning ourselves?
An old song. But it was so funny too. I remember when we were at boxing, I was so quick to be like, come to your defense. And I'm like, what? They take care of you. They should. But then like when the tables were turned and was asked that question, I found myself doing the same thing. And I laughed to myself because I remember said, and I was like, I just jumped at her throat. I'm like, oh, they should want to take care of you. And they should, and I'm like, oh, I'll just bring my own. And that's what I said. Like, I'll just bring my own. They're like, no, what can you do? And they were saying, oh, we got you gluten-free pie. And I was like, oh, thank you. I'm like, fuck, but there's still dairy on it. Like gluten-free was still there. So like, I like took the cheese off and ate like cauliflower with sauce, and it's okay, but it feels different coming to this point. I think that there's like a new threshold or a new, I don't know, level of like, if you go back now, it feels different. Like the things you can't unsee what you saw or unfeel what you felt. like, I don't know, I'm not saying that like never in my life will I not eat like this. I'm not, but it's also,
Yeah.
I just feel like different now. And I
Yeah.
feel like, I don't know how this will morph over time, but I also like know that there's not a point in which it will go further past in the past. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, well, I feel like the more if we feel and see shifts in the way that we feel and energetically and the way that we look and all of that, right? Like if you start to lose some weight and you start to lose some inflammation and both in your brain, right? So you can think clearly and you don't have that fog and that haze and less irritability, like all these things, like that's where I'm like, I don't think I'd ever go back. If I don't feel like what I'm doing is truly creating a shift for me, then it does come back to respect of like, okay, well, like it feels easy when you trust that it's going to work. I will say, like, I trust that this is going to work. So it feels easy now. If I'm doing this for a year and a half and I don't feel like any different, then that's not going to feel like I'm respecting my life and my body, right? I'm like, okay, this feels like I'm creating some unnecessary, like me right now with my celery juice every morning. I have like literally 10, stalks of celery that I buy at a time from the store and like 10 bunches of cilantro and 10 cucumbers. And this like lasts me a few days. Like it's not easy, like, right? Like that, it takes a lot of intention. And right now I'm like happy to do it because it feels like an act of love and respect for myself. Um, but that one other thing I was thinking about in terms of love, like this idea of other people caring about us and for us, and how at first we're like, no, 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 I'm fine. Like, you don't need to do this. You don't need to, no, nothing extra for me, no extra work, no extra care. But then, like, what I've noticed, like my in-laws brought over cucumber salad to celebrate Everett's birthday the other day. And, like my father-in-law was telling me what he put in it and like kind of making sure, like, I'm pretty sure what I made here is like, you can have everything. And it was totally good. But like, I felt so loved and so grateful for that cucumber salad because I just knew like they just were thinking of me and my health and my wellness and like whether or not they were rolling their eyes in the background, I don't know. Right? I don't know. They might have been like, oh gosh, Stephanie. I don't think so. Like, they're so sweet. But it's like this invitation to receive love in a different way and gratitude. Because, like, man, I love food and I love like rich flavors and I love dairy. Like, I love a lot of the things that we're cutting out, right? Um, and normally I'd be like, oh, cucumber salad. Like, I'm not gonna have that. I'm gonna have nacho cheese or like, whatever. I mean, I ate very healthy before too, but I still like to indulge in what I want to eat. Um, but now, like, it's not even always about the food. It's like, it's about what it represents too, like what I choose to put in my body is an act of love for myself. And then when others are like asking for how they can support and then trying their hardest to do it, I just felt like so, so loved and cared for, like just like, wow, I matter. And like, I don't know, it was really beautiful.
Yeah, it definitely is an invitation or opportunity for intimacy. I remember it's not really a food, but this reminds me of when I was sending emails to my list, haven't in like a year.
Oh, so my month long, you're like, oh, womp womp.
Oh, yeah. Back upon that. But when I remember I would always, every time I sent one, I would take like my parents off because I felt uncomfortable. Because I don't know, you know how you're like, sometimes you share something vulnerable and you're like, I don't know, like it feels weird to have them read it. And there was one time I didn't and I forgot. And my mom had responded, like I got an email and it was just like, this is so beautiful. I'm so proud of you. And I was like, like I robbed her of that opportunity to like be that for me, and it's not that I didn't think she would be. I just felt uncomfortable with my own thing, but when she messaged me that, I just felt like so taken aback. And I'm like, what did I think was going to happen? Like, what did I did I think I was going to get mocked on the family thread? Maybe, probably if it were my siblings, or my older siblings. I don't know, but I just felt like, oh, what a pleasant surprise that humbled me and made me rethink my judgments of,
Yeah.
what I would assume would happen there. And I felt really grateful and also a little sad that I didn't open myself up to that before.
Yeah. Yeah. I've done that too, of the don't include make a don't include segment so that I don't feel a sense of shame or whatever. It's I feel like all of this is centering around vulnerability, right? The ways in which we show up vulnerably in our lives or choose to not to try to armor ourselves in these ways and um keep people from accessing our more delicate, fragile parts. And then also the assumptions, I feel like vulnerability and the desire not to be vulnerable, to hide from things, comes from assumptions we make about how we'll be received, assumptions we make about what's easy or hard for other people or triggering or activating for other people, assuming that it's our job to take care of other people, or as you put earlier, acting around the world. I can't remember exactly how you said it again, but working yourself around the environment and the world rather than allowing it to work around or with you. But yeah, all the assumptions that we make and how much we can rob ourselves of opportunities for closeness, opportunities for growth, opportunities for support, and opportunities for intimacy because we just assume. Why do we do that?
Yeah, we assume we know better. And I think that isn't that such an interesting dance, right? It's we do know so much more than we think, and also the exact opposite. It's finding your intuition and moving with that and being connected to it in a very physical gut instinct, whatever, chest, whatever, however you experience it, way, and trusting yourself unconditionally in that way, but also being open to the knowing and the understanding that we can only see as we are in this moment. So what I learned in NLP, in neuro-linguistic programming, it's your reality is holding a flashlight, and whatever that scope of that flashlight is in the dark of a forest, that's how much you're seeing in this realm of reality. And what is that flashlight? It's your combination of your unique beliefs, experiences, values, meta programs, how you were raised, blah, blah, and it all filters, and it's so beautiful and amazing, and also so very limited. And so when you have this innate, deep, instinctual, default level of trust in yourself, I think that's so helpful and so beautiful. But to do that with a closed fist and without open palms, I think that's where it can get a slippery slope. And I think that's where we rob ourselves of things that are so much better than we could ever even imagine. I look at I'll start crying, my little menace over here, and how it was a complete accident. I didn't, we had planned, oh, and then after we get married, which we never did, and then he was just nope, popping in now.
Yeah.
I would have never planned that. Gosh,
Yeah.
What do you think about that? What do you think about a balance between, trusting yourself in your gut, but also how do we hold that both? Hold in that and I know better than someone else around me about my truth. And also I recognize and honor and understand that I don't know everything. And there's, how do you do that dance?
Yeah, I feel like for me and where I advise women that I work with too is while it may be, I mean, I love the NLP analogy of the flashlight in the forest, and like you're only really seeing this much and all the other things you aren't seeing. But that's where I think intuition, it's like it's not all about what you see, it's about what you feel. And for me, intuition is also supported and led, and this may be like where other people veer off, like we all have our different beliefs, but for me, intuition is also led by your spirit guides and people on the other side who maybe you have lost, and they're your loved ones, and like this team of light, like your spiritual team. So for me, your intuition is a feeling inside of you. And then beyond that, it's backed up by or informed by the team of light that we have behind us. And so while we can only see right in front of us in the dark with that flashlight, like our team of light and our guides can see so much more. And then we just honor that feeling that comes from the support that we get when we're plugged in and tapped into source. And then also plugged into our bodies and like trusting in the wisdom of the body. So for me, it's like, that's how it's all married and blended. It's like, so you do just trust and follow your intuition. And I think the other beautiful thing about intuition, it's like, it's this internal compass. And so it's going to lead you in the way that you're meant to go. And then once you veer off course, I mean, it might not happen as soon as you veer off course. It might take some time of meandering and trying to figure like till suddenly you're like, where am I? Or this isn't working. I feel lost now. Your intuition is the feeling that comes in to tell you that. And so it helps guide you into a different direction, And I believe that even when things aren't working out for us and we feel resistance or we feel dissonance or we feel confusion or lack of clarity, like there's still a lesson that we learn. There's still some part of ourselves that going down that path for however long we did, it's part of building who we are. And so even if it's not going to continue to be right for us, it was still the path we needed to take. It was still the thing we needed to do.
It's funny. It definitely mimics the last podcast episode I had with my friend Sarah that I told you we mentioned you in, or I mentioned you in. This idea that destiny is not a yes or no, it's just this inevitability. And exactly what you're saying is no matter what choice you make, it can't be wrong, because even if it's quote unquote not, you went against your gut or whatever happens there is such the opportunity to learn, recognize, see, feel like, oh, I felt that, I knew that, I didn't do that, or oh, I encountered this and that's when I knew to, go this way and blah, blah, blah. It's that switch up of not, I'll believe it when I see it, but I'll see it when I believe it. Mm-hmm. Waiting to see something to believe it is such a moot point, because we see whatever we believe. Like we see whatever we're looking for. We're always finding evidence to support what we already. We're so redundant. We are such redundant beings. Like I don't even remember the stats, the repeated thoughts that we have in a day, and our habits and this and that. That's why it's just so important to do those pauses, to take that time to understand what's going on subconsciously, recognize, why am I feeling like that, and kind of digging in instead of keeping that momentum, because you don't know where that momentum is leading you. That is not exactly where you want to go, or as intentional as you'd like to be.
Yeah. And then this idea of, you mentioned like what's wrong and what's right, and like that nothing really is wrong, right? It just starts feeling harder, or it starts feeling like there's a different opening or there's a different pathway. But like, what do we think right is? Like right is what? Like path, it's no resistance. When something is right, it's easy. When something is right, it yields material, riches and goods. Like what is right and what is wrong? Like the right thing can actually be the hard thing. But I think we feel like something's right only if it creates ease and yeah, like wealth or abundance of some kind, whether that's material or, emotional, spiritual.
Yeah, it just everything is neither this or that. Everything is neutral, which sounds so harsh and so hard to swallow, really, because we're human beings and like it's really hard to think about love or life that way. It's hard to think about love that way. It's hard to think about being a mom that way. It's hard to think of our children that way. Like something, it's not right or wrong. And seriously, one of the biggest mind-blowing moments for me is like when I pulled my head out of my ass long enough to realize, oh, they're not my things. I don't own them. I'm only here to guide them. Like that is it. I really don't want to smother them, even though I really want to smother them.
Yeah.
It's so difficult and beautiful, right? To like open yourself up to questioning your own instincts for labeling, because I don't think there's something bad about that. I don't think it's bad to label it, but I just think that when you let yourself do that without that, should I be doing that? It just continues to like strengthen the horse blinder situation. I think it's just healthy. Not that we have to go on a diatribe every time we think anything, but I think it's just healthy to have that moment of being like, oh, that's funny. Okay, I was looking to say that was good or that was bad, and it's actually neither.
Yeah. 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 There's like comfort in categorizing. There's comfort in labeling, but it can be rather destructive too. It's a helpful, useful tool, but it can also be a destructive mechanism to constantly feel like it's this or it's that. Nothing in life is this or that, is it? I mean, maybe some things, but like everything is so multifaceted and layered.
What do you find in your work with women? Like, do you find there to be in I don't want to say an openness in interpreting it differently, but like what do you find to be the themes of like the hard and the resistance and the struggle and the is it around like, oh, I'm looking at this as good or as bad, or is it around this theme that we were talking about of like shaming yourself for the prioritizing yourself or being the difficult, or what is really something that you see in your work? Because I know that you work with a lot of women.
Yeah, I think it's like it varies so much depending on the container that I've created, So like when I'm working with women one-on-one, so often it's not even like I can't pin down at this moment in time like a collective concern or like issue because they come wanting so deeply to activate. They're like ready to step into themselves in this next season of their lives in really big, mega powerful, sparkly, exciting ways, And I guess if you were looking for the common theme there, though, like the theme is there's been something that's been stopping them or keeping them from being able to get to that next level activation that they're looking for, to bring alive in their life whatever it is that they're looking for. And they're looking for different things. And then I feel like, oftentimes in the group settings, like the women's circles or the retreats that I'm holding, it's women who are looking for connection, like connection to self, really understanding and seeing themselves more deeply and wholly and accepting those parts of themselves. Like they definitely come into that collective group space, feeling like their challenges or their obstacles or their problems are their own. But then what they find when women start sharing and being vulnerable is like, oh my goodness, like I feel a part of my story in each and every one of these women in this space. And so they begin to feel less alone. And then it bolsters them on their journey to find, I mean, in that moment, they've already found connection, but then as they're seeking more connection in their day-to-day lives, it's like they feel the backing and the energy of the women that they were in that space with, of always like, I'm not alone. I'm not alone. This is a collective experience. This is part of what it's like to be human, you know? And I think there is so much power in sharing your life and your world. I mean, going back to kind of where we started with our conversation of like, oh, I'm scared to tell people I've made this change. I'm scared of what they'll think of me. I'm scared of them having to bend over backwards for me. You know, these women come into these spaces that I hold until they get to know them well, often feeling a little shy to ask for what they need or for to state their truth. But then when they do, it's that feeling we mentioned of like, oh, I did that. And in sharing this part of myself, it was an act of love, and it was an act of trust that I won't be shamed or ridiculed or an outcast, right? That I'll be accepted and I'll be supported. Um, and just how much that can shift like your energy in your day-to-day life. Like once we hold that respect and love for ourselves, we begin to ask for it from other people in these other ways. So I feel like, you know, that's a big part of what I do. And that's a big part of what I see. And like we are the embodiment of that now too, just in this conversation that we had of like, oh, I'm scared to share this new thing because I don't fully understand it yet. And so, you know, how could I expect others to? The other theme that I do notice a lot in the women that I work with, whether it's in circle or one-on-one, is this theme of trust, is this theme of trusting themselves and their intuition and their feelings. And, you know, whether it's wanting to leave a job, whether it's wanting to connect with their spirit guides, whether it's wanting to leave a partner that's not supportive, like whatever it is, the holdup that they often face is fully trusting themselves, their feelings, their intuition, and then going back again to that conversation of respect and love that you have for yourself. Do I respect myself enough? Do I love myself enough? Despite my shortcomings, despite my challenges, despite the ways I make life harder for everyone, because that's what we often think about ourselves, you know, can I create this shift? Can I call in what I want, whether it's the next level activation or healing from a broken place? You know, it comes back to, can I trust myself? Can I trust the feelings that I have inside are leading me to the place I want to go? And it's hardest to trust themselves when they know that they're going to be facing resistance and a challenge in some way, right? Like if it's leaving an unsupportive partner, like, is it going to be worth it? You know, do I have what it takes to ride out this storm? And then when the storm has passed, to build everything up anew and from scratch. Yeah. And again, I think that relates back to this conversation that we opened of like, do we trust ourselves enough? Do we trust our bodies and what they're telling us? Do I trust the knowing that the information that I'm coming across here and the quickening of my heart and the feeling of possibility and hope, is it just that I'm so desperate for hope and possibility and healing that I'm going to just do this? Or do I feel this way because this is the next part of my path and my journey forward?
And what's the alternative, right? Like, do I trust myself or am I trusting everything else around me more?
Yes.
Like, it's like, what are you making that mean? Like, what is it? Even when you're like, oh yeah, to respect myself, what does that mean to you to respect yourself? What does that mean? Like, how do you action that? And like, what are those standards that you're making about that? Right.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I think about how even the other night, I almost boxed you guys, but I was tired once I got home. But after I got like emotional and cried, and I felt myself with a vulnerability hangover a little bit. I'm like, why? I couldn't be with people I trusted more. You know, it's like there was nothing. Why? Oh, that's so weird about what I said or whatever. And it's like, oh, I remember like growing up, my dad would get so mad if my mom overshared something. And I felt that a historical body symptom that I'm feeling.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, and that can completely interfere with trusting yourself and what you should do because like past trauma, whether it's little t or big T trauma, like it totally affects, it imprints on us and it can cloud our vision.
And then at a certain point, don't you just feel like, oh, just need a nap,
Yeah.
whatever, right?
Yeah, totally. Amen. I'm not yawning now. And what's it all for, right? Like we're here wildly, feverishly spinning. I mean, we know what it's all for. We don't know, but it's like, I mean, I when I say what's it all for, I am so grateful for my life and to have the opportunity to be on earth right now. And even in its pain and shortcomings and injustice and all of that, like what a beautiful experience to be able to have, to be alive, to see the sun shining, to see the leaves moving with the breeze, to, find symbolism in the birds that are flying across the sky or the dime that you find when you're taking a walk. But yeah, when we find ourselves spinning and seeking and chasing and like overthinking and overanalyzing and struggling. It's like, what's that all for?
Yeah. And then instead of, lashing out, you could just say, "Ah, that's funny. I was doing that thing again. Look at that leaf over there."
Yeah.
Oh, man. Is there anything else that resonant or felt like something you wanted to address in this realm as we continue on with our new lifestyle? As I sit here with watermelon seed flavor, seed and nut thins.
I know I'm thinking about my heavy metal detox smoothie I'll be making after this call when I go downstairs with my wild blueberries, oranges, spirulina, wheat barley grass, and dulce. I don't even know how to say it. Dulce flakes, I don't know. Some cilantro. It's gonna be great. I think it's so hard to pick like one thing, like anything else to say, like so much to say always, and also enough said already.
Exactly.
Right? So much more to say and enough. It's enough. And I feel like there's something there to share. I think it is just this message of trust. Like, when you and I were talking today about, well, what do we share and what do we want to talk about? We're such good friends. We always have these like great layered conversations that go in all these different spaces. And one of the things that's really shifted in our lives and has been creating resistance and expansion and contraction and confusion and excitement and possibility and all of that is this lifestyle change, this diet change to hopefully heal these autoimmune diseases that we have. And so while we were like, well, that might not be relevant to like everyone listening, but what is relevant is this. And I think I just want to highlight and reaffirm the themes in life that everyone can be like reminded of, which is you're always changing. We are ever changing. We are humans and we are spiritual beings and we are always changing and we are always evolving. And there's no shame in your changing. There's no shame. There's nothing wrong with, there's nothing inconvenient truly about you learning something new and you applying it to your life, right? Like all of the animals around us, all of the plants around us have had to adapt. They've had to adapt and change the way that they look, the way that they function, the way that they operate in order to survive on Earth in this time, right? And we as human and spiritual beings have to do the same. We have to change. We have to adapt. We have to grow.
And nothing blooms year round.
Exactly. And that's like, yes, the other big piece of the work that I do and the thing that I'm so passionate about is the cycles that we live through, that we get to live through. And so we are not in the harvest mode and production mode all the time, and we're not in full bloom all the time. We have to shed layers. We drop our leaves, we go inward, we hibernate, we're still, we're dormant, and things are happening. And so, when you make a lifestyle change or a relationship change, it doesn't have to be forever too, right? And like things can be really going great in a relationship. Your sex life like can be hot and steamy, and then it can be really like non-existent for a while. And when it's non-existent or when there's dissonance, it doesn't mean that like you failed or your relationship is doomed. It means that you're in a new cycle, right? And so it's like this invitation to look at, okay, like what either in my sex life needs to be nurtured and loved, or what other part of myself, my physical self, my emotional self, or my spiritual self, maybe not even related to my relationship or sex life, needs to be looked at and nurtured and loved. Because like if there's other components to ourselves that aren't being looked after the way that they need to, something somewhere else in our life is going to fall out of alignment. And I think, gosh, I mean, this is like the metaphor for health too, is like in Western medicine, they look at the one thing that stops functioning, right? Like, oh, your sex life is bad, metaphor, right? Or like, oh, your thyroid isn't functioning. So this is the drug and this is going to fix your problems. Well, if it actually fixed our problems, we would feel better, right? If that pill, this levothyroxine, was going to fix my hypothyroidism and Hashimoto's, then I would be able to lose weight again. I would be able to think clearly. I would be able to have great memory. I would be able to have all this energy to play with my kids more than I do now, But it's not. It's a symptom of other things that are wrong, like systems that are off in the body. And so your sex life that might not be blooming right now, it's not just the sex that needs to be looked at, right? It's that there's something else off with you or with your partner or the environment that you're in that needs to be looked at and addressed. So I think that's like the last thing that I would say for people is wherever you might be experiencing something in your life that feels off or where there's resistance, it's like look underneath that thing. There's something else there, and there's something else that needs to be addressed.
And if you're having trouble doing that, just do this magical switcheroo and think of yourself as your best friend or as your child. So instinctually, we know, like if they're waking up at 3 o'clock every morning, we know this is a phase. Or I was just, talking about how wretched my love of my life little son has been. I know it's a phase. Or like the knowing of when your kid's having a tantrum, the seeing through it and understanding, he's missed, he's wanting. We always just assume like there's something underneath now. We're able to hold that compassion in that space for them in a different way. And it's okay now that we're able to do that for our children or our best friends or whatever. Take that perspective and apply it to yourself. That's where we forget it. That's where it's like the hardest to do it. I always said there's this thing that I do. It's so strange. I bypass myself as like, I feel like Houdini. It's like a magic trick. Like even when I'm in a coaching container, I'm ingesting it. I'm immediately like, oh, how this applies to what I could share with my clients or something. I don't even let it permeate me. I'm just like, oh, I see how that applies to this. But like I bypass myself in the weirdest way. You could read 1,000 million books with the intention of looking at your children or your relationships or your whatever. But those seeds, those roots need to take place in you before you could effectively and cleanly and clearly apply it in other areas of your life because you are the everything.
Yes. Oh my gosh, I resonate so much with that share too. I have done that so many times. Not like, oh, what in me needs healing, what in me needs this bit of information or this knowledge, this wisdom, but how can I help others with it? How can I outsource it to like, just again, coming back to that theme of self-respect, like respecting self, loving self, and not just immediately going into that caretaking of others. Yeah.
Well, it has been an absolute pleasure to connect with you today, as always. All of the contact info for either of us will be in the show notes. I think we're both going to share this on both of our shows. Steph is Little Scraps of Magic podcast, and I am Help Me See podcast. And is there anything else?
Mhm. I just
You're opening you're about to close a container soon?
Oh, yeah. I don't know when this is going out, but June 5th is when I'm starting my next 6-month local to Cleveland women's circle
Yes.
program. It's a 6-month program for up to 8 women. We have 5 spots filled with three spots left. So women who want some sacredness infused back into their lives and ceremony and ritual, but also good-hearted, spontaneous fun and play. It's the beautiful marriage of those things, and it's, women within your local community. So we start the 6-month journey on June 5th. It's called The Village, and this is my 3rd time running it. 4 of the 5 women in have already done it before and just want to keep going, want to keep riding the journey. And the 5th that just added came from some of my women's circles in a retreat I hosted, and was same thing. Like, this was so powerful. I need it in my life, like, consistently.
Amazing.
So yeah, if you're listening, if this goes out, you can definitely.
This is going to go out for me next week. So it'll go on the 29th. So you will have a few more days if you are local to Cleveland to join that. The link will be in the show notes. Yeah.
Anything you want me to share in mine?
I'll
probably just word it nicely and be like, Bianca has a blah, blah, blah.
Yeah,
Sacred
word it
Seeing
way
membership.
more nicely than I would. Yes, my Sacred Seeing membership for creatives. Once a week, we come together and we co-work and connect and support each other. And then my newest offering that I'm on fire about is I offer remote photo sessions from anywhere in the world at this point. And I'm especially looking to focus on emerging artists, people that whatever your craft is, I want to talk about it and find a way to capture you in your flow and your presence, in your genius. So
yes,
that's
and I have lived Bianca's gift. Like, she is so incredible at what she does. And I haven't done a remote session with her because I'm lucky enough to be local. But also, if you are a local Clevelander and you're looking for someone to document your life with the absolute the reverence that it deserves, and the nostalgia in these moments now, to really be able to feel that and see that through the work, you have to reach out to Bianca because she's next level genius.
Thank you, Myra. Open invitation anytime. Come back on the podcast.
Oh, yeah. Let's just do another one tomorrow.
This has been an Awkward Sage production.